not just like, well, this guy was a really good track player, but you don't see it. Like, you see it on the tape, and you're like, oh, okay. But then you realize the guy's been playing corner for like 8 seconds, and you're like, oh, right now, he's basically subsisting entirely on I'm a freak. And not just a college freak, like a freakity freak.
Is there a chance that you just get up off the couch and start singing Super Freak?
I'm not above getting up and saying, super freak, he's super freaky. Like, I'm not opposed to it. Like, let's do it.
To the final edition of the Rock Pile Report Podcast 2025 NFL Draft Preview Series. I'm your host, Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And here with us tonight, not in person, but in spirit, Mr. Bruce Nolan. You know him, you love him. I don't have to give you any of his accolades. Bruce Nolan, cornerback. I guess a cornerback prospect, is it connoisseur, Bruce? Is that like
CB2 connoisseur?
CB2 is connoisseur a good term to use in relation to one who purveys the NFL draft?
Connoisseur feels to me like it's something that implies a level of expertise that I'm not willing and comfortable to put on myself. But I will say aficionado.
Okay.
Potentially, or enthusiast.
Okay.
Would be things where I have a lot of energy towards it, but I'm not like assigning an expertise on myself. And I think I'd be more comfortable with that because I don't like to be boisterous.
See, and
just like Drew, you are a BAC enthusiast.
Oh my God, this is 115 proof. Is that why you kept telling me not to grab it off the shelf?
No, I told you to grab that one because it is a Woodinville single barrel. The people at supermarket liquors in Niagara Falls went to Woodinville and specifically picked out a barrel, and you get it at barrel proof or close to barrel proof.
So here's where I want to start this show, Bruce. There are a lot of things that we've talked about over the course of the last week or two about the Buffalo Bills and where they may or may not end up when it comes to the NFL draft. One thing I think, though, you can say pretty definitively, when you take a look at all of the ways that if you know what you know about Brandon Beane, it's that he utilizes free agency to set himself up to, generally speaking, not ever have to reach when it comes to certain position groups. He likes to build out a roster well ahead of the draft so that he can position himself, whether that's subterfuge, so that if he wants to be aggressive and chase a player, he can do so and kind of mask his intention, whether that's he just believes in setting the floor for his roster prior to committing to the draft so that he can stick with BPA if that's what his heart desires and that's what the coaching staff agrees, is this is the best way to build this thing. I've never seen them go into a draft, especially not with a team as competitive as this one, where they just, it almost seems like intentionally ignored the cornerback position. I mean, Dane Jackson being your addition of note.
CB2.
Do you agree with me that it almost seems like they intentionally avoided it when it came to the UFA market?
I feel like we're doing the same thing we did the year that they drafted Kaiir Elam. Like, I feel like I had the same conversations, and it's about the same guy, ironically enough, which is Dane Jackson. It's we believe in Dane, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and you get jumped for a cornerback in the first round and go, oh, no, I got to go get my guy or the last guy on my board. And it's Kaiir Elam. Oh, no, Trent McDuffie's gone. And so, I feel like I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is not going to play out like this again, is it? Like, no. There's no way that this is happening to me again. It can't be happening to me again. There's no way it would happen to me again. No one would do this to me again. But yet, they're doing it to me again. So all I can hope is cross my fingers on draft day and draft weekend and go, okay, we got 10 picks. You double dip, and if you swing and miss on the first one, then maybe you get a Christian Benford out of the double dip. So I'll take it.
And this is where I think we as fans have to kind of take a deep breath, right? Chris, as we like to say, goose fraba. There's a thing that people do where they take a look, like if I were to go to Our Lads or I go to Pro Football Network and I take a look at our depth chart and I look at that cornerback chart and I say, we have to draft a cornerback and we have to do it early. I hate that. I hate that because it flies in the face of what the draft is supposed to be, which is just the acquisition of talent that's on a cheap contract. The teams that you perennially see going, well, they need to nail this position. And even afterwards, they'll get applauded for it. You'll hear the announcers during the draft go, well, they came into this and they really needed a defensive tackle and they took one and, it's a great thing for them. And those usually are either one, bad football teams in terms of overall record, or they're teams who took a player. They're like, well, they really needed one. You needed one because it was such a glaring hole in your roster that you as a GM and an evaluator of talent didn't put enough other stuff around your lack of drafting one early at any point previously that became a driving force of all the pre-draft chatter, and all the pundits feel comfortable patting themselves on the back when it finally happens and going, look at that. We prognosticated it and it happened and good for them. Except those prognosticators aren't GMs. And they're not, unless you're talking about Mike Mayock, who I think showed everybody why guys who talk about it shouldn't be the same guys who do it. And that there's a pretty sizable jump in between there. So when I think about this cornerback room, I look at it and I say, Dane Jackson was serviceable, and it was what it was. And then you had Rasul Douglas, who you still could have in theory if the draft board doesn't fall your way. But it feels like the Bills are banking on the fact that they won't need to, which I think drives this idea that they have their eyes on a cornerback prospect. Now, it's not lost on me, as you just hit on. Oh, I needed this guy, and somebody jumped me for Trent McDuffie, and I ended up with Kyer Elam. We had a conversation here, Bruce, about this concept that when you take a cornerback after pick 20, it's been historically between 20 and 32, it's a wasteland. There's very few second contracts doled out to the cornerbacks drafted in that range. And a lot of it, I think, my hypothesis is that philosophically teams go, we know there's a guy in the second who might have better tape, but that guy ran a slower 40 and he doesn't have the long arms and he doesn't have the height. And if I could just take this guy who wasn't as good, but has all the intangibles of a guy who went in the top 10, the physical things, I can make him just as good as that guy. How many cornerbacks in this class do you still think fit that bill? Like guys who will go after pick 20 in your mind that you think are just as athletic as the guys who will go early?
I think that cornerbacks and defensive backs in general, specifically frontline defensive backs, so nickel players and outside corners, I think that athleticism matters a lot. I really do. I think athleticism matters in athletics, just as a general rule. I think that's good. I think you should have athletes playing athletics. I don't know. I'm crazy like that. That's my hot take.
Sure.
But to me, the reason why athleticism matters so much in corners is because the really, really, really good athletes on the other side know where they're going and you don't.
Okay.
You don't know where you're going. You don't know where they're going.
You're just chasing.
So you're just chasing. So you always need more athleticism to be the guy who's it versus the guy who's not it. That's just the way it works. And think about it that way. So if you're playing tag and you're it and you're an equal athlete to the guy who's not it, you're going to have a lot of trouble catching him because he knows where he's going. He knows where he's stopping. He knows where he's going. You don't. You need to be a superior athlete, or you need to stylistically cut him off, maybe box him in the corner of your fence. You know, I got you now. You know, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is that you have a disadvantage because they know where they're going and you don't. So for me, I think there's a level of athleticism that's more important in cornerbacks than it is in a lot of other positions. Now, I will say this. I've heard the whole 20 to 32 range and everything. I would be very interested, and I haven't done it yet. I would be interested to see if the hit rate at cornerback between 20 and 32 is markedly different than the hit rate at other positions between 20 and 32. Because what we might just be seeing is the exact thing you just talked about, but not a cornerback phenomenon, an everybody phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right? It's the fact it goes right along with the idea. It just perfectly marries to the concept that there are only 18 players with first round grades, right?
Yep.
This fits right into that concept. The idea that between 20 and 32, what you're doing is you're taking guys who have second round ability, but they've got first round, maybe athleticism. And you're like, all right, I'll pull it up. Or maybe they got third round ability and first round athleticism or whatever it is. And I don't know if that's necessarily true just about corners. It might just be true. Think about edge rushers. Think about when we were going into the Gregory Rousseau draft and we were talking about how it's so hard to find good edge rushers late in the first round because all the ones that are surefire, absolute home runs, let's go, they all go in the top 10.
Yep.
So I don't think this is actually different with corners. I think it's just a prospect thing for me.
We actually just got done talking to Anthony Prohaska from Cover One about that dynamic and how it's been widely charted that if you take a look over the course of a rookie contract, how the pass rush production, like let's just call it pressures. How many pressures do you generate as an edge rusher based on where you're drafted within your rookie contract? In the first 10, you're up here on a pedestal. And then when you drop down to about 12th or later, there's a precipitous fall. And then it kind of plateaus. And then you get to that back 20 and you go, oh no, we're down here now. And so you've got a class above your Myles Garrett's and your and then you've got the Greg Rousseau's of the world. And that doesn't mean that these are bad players. It just means that you are never going to be this other talent. And that's because their physical gifts combined with their football intelligence and combined with their production in college made them so unavoidable for a team that they said, hey, you know what? We know we have needs at quarterback and left tackle and everything else. And that's how we ended up with a top 5 pick. We don't care because that's crazy. That's lightning in a bottle and I'll never see anything like it again. That's how Myles Garrett ends up on the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And so with that said, we all have to kind of coach ourselves out of this mentality of there's going to be a guy and I'm going to be the one who catches lightning in a bottle. It's like, no, I don't need lightning in a bottle. Do you want to know why? The reason that I'm drafting at pick number 30 is because my football team is very good and it's very well coached. And I just need to add the right pieces to it on an annual basis to keep that machine running and continuing to be good. As long as the MVP thing that's driving it all is still in place.
Yeah, as long as Josh Allen's here, I think you got a shot because I've heard he's good at football.
Exactly.
And just right now, just generally winning at life. So let's talk about that too.
Yeah.
But also, for me, it's a matter of not allowing what you just said to be the case. Not allowing yourself to move off the concept that this guy's got second round tape, and so we're picking him at the bottom of the first. And the idea that somehow at 30, an elite talent's going to fall to you. That's not how this works, right? Because, like we said, every year, 18 first-round grades, 15 first-round grades, sometimes 13 first-round grades, they're just not going to fall, right? So don't try and capture the lightning in the bottle, right? Don't try and say, well, I'm going to be the exception to this rule. Don't hunt for exceptions. Just hit a solid triple, and you know what? Maybe somebody will make an error and ends up being a home run, right? Just connect with the ball, right? Don't swing for the fences. Connect with the ball, drive it into the field, and call it a day. And you know what? Those things can be homers. I'm not saying don't home runs are bad. Home runs are awesome. I'm just saying the idea that you're picking at 30 for a reason, and the idea that second round players are somehow vastly different than the player you're going to pick at 30, it's just not true. That's the reason why, even though the Buffalo Bills have 10 picks, if you told me that somebody came calling for a quarterback, right? Okay, so let's assume for a second that Ward goes number 1. Let's assume Shadur Sanders goes 9 to the Saints or something like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're there at 30 and somebody wants to call, they want to come up from 33 potentially, right? And they're like, hey, I want a 5th-year option on this quarterback.
Yep.
I'm taking that call.
100%.
I'm absolutely doing it. Oh, well, I don't need more picks. I'm not saying I get more picks. I'm saying I trade out of the first round, and then I use some of that day 3 capital to move back up and just say, listen, the best way to ensure myself that maybe I do get that triple that turns into a homer, right, is to get more triples.
Yep.
Right? That's the idea. So if I can't get a homer, if I can't get all the way up into the top 13 of the draft or the top 12 of the draft, then let's just get as many triples as I possibly can. And who knows? Maybe somebody turns into a homer. Someone makes an error. It's just a perfect hit. Someone slips on the grass. Whatever it is, it ends up being a home run. The baseball metaphor is not working for me today because I'm not a baseball guy, but we're going to go with it. Like, that's what I want. And so for me, you need to distinguish yourself. The idea that, this is a first round pick. I don't need a first round talent. You're probably not going to get one, but you could get a second round talent that fits your system, or you could trade back and get multiple second round talents. So for me, that's the way I feel about it. I'm just lamenting the fact every time Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings were to win a game this season, I was just mad. I was kind of hoping the Vikings would be like, pick number 35 or some crap like that. It just didn't happen that way.
So when we talk about the quality, right? Because this is the secondary class as a whole. When you take a look at this year, safety's never really. I mean, Jamal Adams was probably the last safety to get drafted really highly, and I think we can all agree that was a failure. They did get a number of. I don't know who failed worse. Did the Jets fail worse in drafting him in the top 10, or did the Seahawks? Okay,
the Seahawks. Well, I posted it at the time. I said the Seahawks got absolutely robbed, and there was a guy in my comments who was like, "What are you talking about? They got closer to a Super Bowl." And I was like, "It doesn't matter. You put two first round picks on a safety, who's, mind you, just an inflated linebacker at that point."
Yeah.
He's a safety. It's a dying breed of safety. I will say this. Caleb Downs, Ohio State, he's going high next year. He's going really high. He's going to be one of those players.
Oh, no.
Yes. It's going to happen.
No. And then we're going to have this debate of where does he deserve to be? And then when he gets drafted, you're going to go, oh, that's way too high. And then you have to wait 3 years to be able to look back and go, see, I was right. Or,
it's going to happen.
Oh, no, I was wrong.
I'm warning you ahead of time. It's going to happen.
So one of the things that I like about this is I look at last year's draft, and I remember people talking about players like Nate Wiggins, Quinny Mitchell. I'm looking at Terry and Arnold. There really wasn't a lot of secondary movement in the first round. And then you got into the second round, and it got a little bit, you saw guys start to come off the board, but it was just very interesting to me that it was like, I remember I'm old enough to remember Ennis Rakestraw being talked about as probably one of the better cornerbacks in the draft. And he took till the late second to come off the board. It was just, there was a lot of things going on with secondary players in that draft. And then when I look at this year's crop, I go, there's maybe one or two in the first round. I mean, how realistically though, these are all based on pre-draft prognostications. If your gut and your history of doing this tells you anything, Bruce, how many DBs do you see going in the top 60, let's say?
Oh man, what a great question. And I wish you would have prepped me. I would have sat down and counted. But all right, let me just do a quick in my head. Is there something you can opine on that would allow you to like monologue for a minute while I'm counting out loud in my head? I'm like,
nobody knows how to bloviate better than the Rock Power.
So I need right now. I need Syndrome from The Incredibles. I need that level of monologuing from you.
Give me
stall while I count in my head how many of these people I think.
Go count. Here's the reason why, Chris, this is important. And for those of you lay fans out there who don't understand, when you're talking about the cornerback position, you could be the team that says, I value player X here. What you never want to be is the GM who's watching the board fall and saying, man, I'd really like this cornerback. Oh, wait a minute. It seems like he's falling. Well, now I don't have to make any phone calls. I'm not trading up. And then you watch the board continue to fall. And then you go, well, wait a minute. Nobody else is taking him. And now other players are actually becoming like, Chris, maybe there's a run on quarterbacks. Yeah. Probably not in this class, but maybe there's a run on running backs where they go, Jonty's gone, and this player went. And then shockingly, D tackles start to go. And you go, oh, shit. I was in this cornerback market where I thought I knew who I wanted and where I could reasonably get them. And now all of a sudden, there's a whole other world of options available for me. So then while you're doing your due diligence, the people who might trade up are also doing that. And you watch this thing happen where it's a chain reaction of teams going, oh, wait, this group isn't viewed as the way we thought it was going to be viewed. And now we end up in a whole different world where anything is possible.
Yeah, it really is. And I went back and I counted. So I have 9 corners with first or second round grades, and I have 4 safeties with first or second round grades. So that's 13 individual, 13 out of 60. And so it's probably not going to end up being 13 because that's a high number, 13 out of 60. But what that means to me is that the Bills are going to have options probably with the second pick in the second round. Their second pick in the second round, that's going to be somebody I probably like.
Like a Cole Bishop.
Okay, so fun story. I actually didn't have a second on Cole Bishop and wasn't as high on him as everybody else was. The safety that ended up going to Arizona, whose name is escaping me right now, and I cannot remember for whatever reason, Dadrion Tyler Davidson. That's what it was. Demerson, yes. I had him markedly above Cole Bishop, and I was like, come on. And I was like, safety. This is the other safety. So, and I liked Cole Bishop like as a specific role, but it seemed redundant with me with Taylor Rapp, and I thought that was strange. I thought both of them do their best work when they're in the box, and I would much rather take a coverage safety and teach him to come downhill than a box safety and teach him to cover. Like, that's just generally speaking the way that I feel about safeties. I always have a bias toward coverage safeties over box safeties. Always. Because
it's so much harder to teach the free safety role. Like, when you think about Micah Hyde, I remember there was a giant of a man named Justin Yulberg shaking me because we were staring down the hashes of the Buffalo Bills New England Patriots playoff game where it was 0 degrees, and I think it was negative after the sun went down. And you got to watch Micah Hyde come from the opposite hash, and that's all he kept screaming as he was shaking me like a rag doll, going, from the other hash! Because Micah Hyde was patrolling the middle, and he drifted towards the right hash, if I'm looking down the middle of the field this way, and then still somehow managed to come back on the other side and slide underneath the ball to pick it off in the end zone for a touchback. And that was the drive where New England started the game looking like they had something. It just evaporated in that one moment. And it's like, that play was the moment for them in A Bronx Tale when they lock the bar door and they tell the bikers, now you can't leave.
Yeah.
That was it for the Patriots. They crumbled from that point and were never a factor in the game again.
I'm glad you referenced that movie because I was thinking Watchmen, where he goes, I'm gonna see if I can do the impression, right? I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Yes, dude.
You know, that was my
Rorschach.
Yeah, Rorschach. That's a pretty decent impression.
You do a pretty good Rorschach. I like that.
Yeah.
So it made me I think about those moments and I go, that play right there is something that you rarely see out of a Taylor Rapp or a Cole Bishop archetype, if that's what you're talking about, which is why the guy who can do the deep third kind of thing, that's so much crazier and you have to prioritize it, or at least you should. So the Bills' approach has been interesting to watch as they've been rebuilding this secondary. Now, when it comes to this specific draft class, now you have a handful of guys who you view as day 1 and 2. I first want to ask the question, before we get into specific prospects and who you like, who you don't. I asked, we were talking with Mark Schofield from SB Nation about wide receivers, and I brought up Travis Hunter. And I was like, do you see him as a wide receiver or corner? And he was like, well, he's a corner who you can sprinkle in as a wide receiver. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. I agree with that assessment. I think that I will say this. If you play him as a wide receiver, I still think he can be a really good wide receiver. I'm not so strong as to saying that you're wasting an opportunity.
14 touchdowns doesn't just fall from the sky.
Yeah. And it's not like he's not getting open, because he is.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a matter of, well, what could the guy do if he devoted all his, energy or most of it, to a single position, regardless of.
Well, if you're talking about him devoting everything towards cornerback, he was first among all cornerbacks in Power 5 conferences for passer rating allowed at 38.7%.
Yeah.
Does it get better? Because if it gets better than that, then yeah, you should run up to the podium and draft him like 2nd or 3rd overall in this class.
And that's where I think he should go. I think Cleveland should pick him. The fact that Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback, and they're all like, you got to take Shedeur Sanders. That to me, it flies exactly against the idea that you just talked about.
Yep.
That the draft is about collecting the best talent you possibly can.
Yep.
And if you believe in Shedeur Sanders, sure, then by all means, let's go do it. If you're not like, this is the dude, like this is the guy, if you don't have that level of conviction, don't take one. Because what happens is you start the clock on your tenure as a GM and as a coach when you draft a quarterback high. And so I would rather go down folding every hand than I would go down going all in when I have a 2 and a 7.
Okay.
Right?
I like that analogy. I like that analogy.
And so for me, that's the way it is. Because listen, if I fold, I'm going to get a better hand eventually. Like the better hand's going to come at some point, right? I'd rather death by paper cut my way through it than go all in and go, well, you know what? I know it's a 2 and a 7, but you never know. Maybe someone else has a 2 and a 7 of worst sweets. Worst. Did I say sweets?
You did say sweets,
worst,
and that's hilarious.
Good stuff is happening to my speaking abilities right now. But to me, that's the way that I look at it with quarterback, and I look at it the same way with corner. The difference is, of course, we're not drafting the top 5.
Yep.
Right. Top 5, as we previously mentioned, that's where you get to add elite talent.
Yep.
If you don't think the guy's an elite talent, don't take him.
No. Go somewhere else because you will get another elite talent.
You will.
So when we talk about the guys who might be available for Buffalo at, let's say, pick 30, if the mob has its day and they say, hey, you have to draft a cornerback at 30. I take a look at where some of these guys are prognosticated to go. And this is why I hate this. Because we all know guys will get taken. Like GMs don't subscribe to these theories. This is all just fans and people with analytics talking about these things. Mock drafting is a good exercise if you're like trying to ready yourself emotionally for the possible outcomes. But the problem is that it's all driven by what other people who are not professional GMs think. When I look at this and I say, okay, there's been a handful of guys talked about around the Bills. Trey Amos is one that keeps coming up. Why do you think Trey Amos is and isn't a fit for the Bills?
I think Amos does his best work in cover 3 and quarters. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you have modern NFL defenses that do a lot of that, I think it's one of the things you have to think about is the translation to the next game. If you look at a corner in the college and you go, man, as long as he's press man, he's fine, but he's just lost everywhere else. I'm sorry, you're not playing press man enough for that to matter in the NFL. Yeah. It's just not a thing. And that's what happened with Kaiir Elam, is that you're like, man, I mean, this guy's an athletic guy, play press man. That's awesome. Do you know how many snaps you play press man in the NFL? It's not a lot. And it doesn't matter if you're the most aggressive team in the world. It doesn't matter if you're the Browns under Greg Williams and you're lining up one safety 35 yards off the ball. That's not going to happen with enough regularity for that to be your bread and butter. It has to be a thing you do, but it cannot be the thing you do.
Yeah.
And so for Amos, it's not about, oh, hey, man, he looks really great when he stays attached. And man, that's great. It's about watching his spatial awareness. It's about watching him in off coverage. It's about watching him in cover 3, quarters, things like that. And I think that's where you probably do your best work. I mean, click and close is really, really strong. Length is really important in his zone corner because you're not going to be in the receiver's back pocket at all time. You have to close and you have to challenge. And so for me, length is important and he's got it. To me, when I look at Amos and I think to myself, okay, where's the poop, Robin? Like what's the issue, right?
Yeah.
And to me, we're not talking about it enough. I don't know if he's got the tackling aggression that someone like Sean McDermott's going to love. And I know that we're like all about Trey Amos, and I'm cool with that. Like, don't get me wrong, but historically, it has been a hard stop for the Buffalo Bills if you don't tackle like really, really well. Now, Trey White,
there's a reason
didn't tackle great,
but there's a reason Rasul Douglas appealed to them so much. They went out and they made an in-season trade for him.
Yep.
And the reason why is because they looked at him and said, hey, you know what this guy does? He plays really physically throughout the route stem, but also he is never afraid to come downhill and just stick his face in the fan.
No, he's not. And I'm not saying that Amos is afraid of that. I'm just saying that he doesn't get off of he has a tendency to say, okay, I'm blocked.
Sure.
Like I'm blocked. Okay. I don't know if you've paid attention, but if you watch the all 22, you see it a lot more than if you watch the broadcast angle. Mm-hmm. Some of the quote unquote blocking battles, you can't see me, I'm doing air quotes, that occur on the perimeter of NFL plays is just a cornerback and a receiver going, listen, man, I'm going to hug you. You're going to hug me. No one's going to get hurt. We're just going to sit here and kind of look in the backfield. And then,
I was going to say, Bruce,
the whistle's going to happen. That's the way it works.
That's the beauty of where my seats are. I love being at the stadium because I watch the sideline angle all day long when I'm at home with my family and friends. We got a house full of people. I love having the end zone view from end to end at a kind of angle up so I can see both end zones. And at the same time, I get to watch every play develop. So I get to see the blocking breakdowns. I get to see when a player gets sacked. I know it's coming because I can see that quarterback does not see the tackle that just missed his block. Also, what I do watch is on the perimeter when that happens, you get to watch these guys and I go, I thought you had to really shove each other around to do this job. You don't. Not every down.
No, you don't. This is the reason why I actually think that Azare Thomas is probably okay. I like Trey Amos, and I'm completely on board. But like when I'm trying to project out who they might like more, I actually think they might like Azare Thomas more, right? Okay. Because what did I just finish saying about coverage safeties, right? I prefer a coverage safety who you got to teach to come downhill and do it. As I want a caveat here, as long as they're trying. To me, the absolute death knell on a defensive back is not your ability to tackle, it's your willingness.
Yes.
So for me, if you come downhill like a bat out of Hades and you're just overrunning, I can deal with that. Like I can teach you to channel your energies into a more productive situation. I just can't teach you to care about it. So Azare Thomas is a great example of that, right? Azare Thomas has shown a really good ability, especially in the most recent year, to, hey, I'm going to fight this thing. Now, I'm not saying he does it great all the time, but at least he fights it all the time. He doesn't accept his block. He doesn't just go, well, that's it. Guess I've been blocked.
It honestly, like I've seen it. In fact,
know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to lie to you. I used to do it.
I never did it. Like I'd fight you in a phone booth, baby.
Of course you would. Now, me being a like Pee Wee football. We're talking Pee Wee football at that level. I was even just like me. And I remember the one day I got my finger caught in a kid's face mask and this finger ended up on the back of these two. And it was just a problem. And so I didn't get pulled out of the game because my dad came down off the bleachers and did this thing of like, well, are you hurt or are you injured? If you think you're hurt enough to come out of the game, then maybe you should. But if you don't think so, then maybe you should go back out there. And I was like, oh my God. All right, then I'll go do the thing. And it was almost like the kid who saw my finger through his face mask was like, dude, are you okay? No, of course I'm not. And he and I made a gentleman's agreement, almost unspoken, of just, we're going to lean on each other for the next half hour. It's you and me leaning on one another for a while, and no one's really going to try to press an advantage. And I'm forever grateful to that guy. Like, I remember it to this day, and I was probably in like 7th grade. But it was one of those moments of, I understand what that is to just say, hey, guess what? We're just going to meet in the middle, and then just, hey, this is a self-preservation for both of us.
Some of the fights that you see that occur between defensive backs and wide receivers is when there's a misunderstanding of the gentleman's agreement.
Yes, exactly. Because then if that guy had thought he could get me and then just swam over me, I would have been furious.
Exactly.
Would have been a fight.
Yeah, the cornerback kind of jogs up and he's like, all right, we're going to engage the block. And then the wide receiver like knocks him on his rear. You're like, whoa, dude, what happened? I thought we had an agreement. You feel like you've just been hoodwinked, bamboozled, yes. Right? I'm going to call that a bamboozle conflict from here on in.
So I look through the rest of the class, the top at least, outside cornerbacks. And O'Donnell Fortune is one of these guys where you talk about the willingness to tackle. And I go, man, he's got this lackluster combine, but he keeps showing up on tape. He is your quintessential 2nd, 3rd round pick where you go, his tape probably doesn't support him. His measurables don't support him being on the field. But if you watch the games, you go, well, he made a lot of plays against upper echelon competition. Maybe that translates. And then you watch him just fail in terms of willingness to tackle. And you go, oh no.
Yeah, and to me, it's not even just a willingness there. To me, it's a play strength issue. Like,
okay,
you watch him run around, and he's a thinly framed guy.
Yes,
I mean, he's pushing 6'2", and he's 185 pounds, right? So he's already what is the replacements? He's wiry,
yes,
right? He's wiry, right? And so for me, it's a matter of like the guy's just going to get bullied.
Yeah.
And so for me, the concern there is, okay, you look at his frame, you have a conversation with the strength coaches, and you go, okay, listen, is this, I mean, it's not like he went to, Sisters of the Poor, right? He went to South Carolina, and he was I think 2-year starter. So like,
yes,
it was a situation where the guy had opportunities, right, to bulk up. He had opportunities to put on play strength. Is it just an issue where he just doesn't?
See, this is the thing that nobody talks about, and you might have just opened my mind up to this. Look at you. You're not only are you knowledgeable, but also you're thought provoking, because now I'm sitting here thinking, how much of this is also on the prospect? Like, you had this opportunity and you didn't hit the gym.
Did you not know that you were wiry? Did no one tell you? I'm pretty sure somebody probably told you.
You never tried to build these things out when someone said, hey, guess what? You look a little bit thin and you play a little bit soft, which I'm sure he had to hear, because you don't make it to that level without being criticized to that degree.
This is the same conversation we had about Emmanuel Forbes when he was coming out. Listen, love the tape. I love the coverage instincts. The dude's just too thin. Like, he's just so thin. Like, you're worried that you're going to play a game in inclement weather and you're going to go into the locker room at halftime with fewer players than you came out with, because he's going to get blown away. Like, that's the concern that you have. Now, it's not to that same level. Goodness gracious, he's not 165 pounds, but he's a little, frail. But then you look at it and you go, man, like, there's some really good, like, from a technical aspect, if I'm sitting there and I'm teaching my cornerback specific things, there are some reps that he puts on film, O'Donnell portrait, where I go, that right there, that, just, and I turn to somebody who's a little thicker and I go, just do that thing that he just did. That thing he just did, just do that. Do what he did. And you go, oh my gosh, like, I wish you didn't have the glaring flaw that you did. But when the flaw is that big, to me, I'll level with you. To me, he's a day 3 guy.
Okay. And now, how do you think, though, like, our team probably wouldn't touch a guy like that, right?
I don't think so. I think that the run defense is too much.
Yes.
For them. I think, quite frankly, it's the reason why Asante Samuel isn't a Buffalo Bill right now.
And I will say that I think that because we've spent a lot of time this offseason talking about archetypes and how the Bills' archetypes at different positions have changed since Sean McDermott got here. The linebacker archetype got its first real test when they had Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano. And they picked Milano over Edmonds and said, this is the guy we think we need. And then they doubled and tripled down on it since then with Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams. And even if you want to go as far as Joe Andreessen and you say, hey, we're going to fill this with smaller pursuit style linebackers, but it's because we know what we want in our defense and these guys fit it. And they figured out at least one block of their defense. Now, defensive line, it's been the results have been hit and miss. And the jury's still on Dwayne Carter. It's too early. But you take a look at, like, wide receiver for the Bills and you go, I don't know if you guys really know what it is you want. Because you seem to draft guys and then want them to do things and then they get here and they can't do it. So there's some of this when I think it comes to the cornerback position where they just wait and they go, well, the one we took early imploded. And yet somehow we've made hay with multiple day 3 defensive backs. And it all just seems to keep working. What do you think it is that drives a dynamic like that? Is it
the
just
dynamic of us hitting at day 3 and missing on day 1?
Missing on day 1 and then not really taking swings, and yet they trust that on day 3 they can find a guy, whether it's coming out of Weber State, whether it's coming out of Pitt, pit, whether it doesn't matter where it's coming out of. We will find a defensive back who can do a thing that we can mold to fit a specific role, and that's all I need, and we can get through.
All right, so I'm going to try really hard to frame this in a way that doesn't make it sound like I'm having a crazy hot take here, okay? On day 3 of the draft, position coaches have more influence.
Okay.
And on day 1 of the draft, they have less.
Okay.
So for me, this is about
can I stop
having
you there?
Conversations about fit.
And I want to explain that to some of our lay listeners. So you need to understand, day 1, you have to have that 5th-year option that plays a role in whatever position you're taking. And if that position is not viewed as a premium, it's why safety is so hard to take in the first round. Because what are the odds you're picking up a 5th-year option on a safety? We've been cycling through free agency for hours, so it doesn't matter. You would never take that position day 1. It lends gravitas towards the ones that you might, like quarterback, tackle, guard, anybody who plays in the trenches. You're in the secondary. You're so far behind in the pecking order in that way. And I also think that it makes it hard. Like safeties are a rare breed in the first round. You have to be special in order to get drafted in the first round. That doesn't mean you're a bad player. You could be the best safety in your class. The odds that you're a first round pick. I mean, Jamal Adams was flash in a pan. I just think that I think that there's opportunity cost taken into account. Is that the right way to say it?
I think that there are other factors apart from how does this guy fit that can overwhelm the fit part of the diagnosis the higher you get in the draft. On day 3, it's about, can this guy fit with our system? Can he do it? And I think that that's one of those things you end up with a surprise. Like, oh, he fit. And also, by the way, he's awesome. Right? Yeah. But think about some of the picks you've seen in the first round. Okay. Kaiir Elam, when they drafted him, I thought it was a signal of a change because the fit was not good. And I was like, oh, well, clearly they're changing their defense because they drafted Kaiir Elam. They must know. No, they didn't know something I didn't know. No. They thought they could fit him in. But I didn't think the fit was great. In fact, I was doing a show with Joe Marino after the draft, and they said, who would you pick? And I said, well, I think I picked Kaiir Elam because I think you're going somewhere else with this defense. And I was wrong. They weren't going somewhere else with this defense. Because I did the whole thing by, hey, I think they're going somewhere else. They didn't work. Whereas Christian Benford, he was viewed as someone who is a high floor, experienced player who fit the system. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, he's also awesome. And who is it that helps you determine whether or not they're a fit? It's the positional coaches. So for me, I think the same thing with Dalton Kincaid. When the Bills drafted Dalton Kincaid, you went, wait, it's a second tight end? What? Oh, well, clearly they're going to move to a bunch of 12, and that's going to be the case. And they have moved to more 12, but not enough that we would make it feel so like it's the same. You notice those picks never happen on day 3. They always happen on day 1 with the Bills. So I think that really what's happening is the concept of fit is not carrying as much weight early as it does late. And guess what? I intended for that to rhyme.
I love this about you. You're very intentional about your approach to a lot of things. I love the way that you've come to a lot of these realizations. And I love the fact that you come in here and you talk to us about what that room looks like. Who is the guy that I want one prospect, one you'd be super excited about in terms of, hey, I want this guy for the Buffalo Bills. And I don't care where. Just in this draft class, I think that this could be the answer to CB2. And then one guy who you would absolutely turn the TV off and just have to go pace for a moment. If you saw that pick.
So I'm going to start with the player that I really like. And I really like Darian Porter from Iowa State. And the reason I really like Darian Porter from Iowa State is because I think that if you drafted a player like that and then you went out and you signed Rasul Douglas again, and you didn't make him be CB2 right away, I think you've got rare physical ability from Darian Porter. Like, people use the word freakish, like, kind of a lot. I'm willing to say it's actual freakish with Darian Porter. And it's not just like, well, this guy was a really good track player, but you don't see it. Like, you see it on the tape, and you're like, oh, okay. But then you realize the guy's been playing corner for like 8 seconds, and you're like, oh, right now he's basically subsisting entirely on I'm a freak. And not just a college freak, like a freakity freak.
I'm not going to lie to you, though. Well, that smells like Micah Hyde.
Bruce, I was going to ask you, so if we draft Porter, and you're saying that he's a freak, so in your excitement for drafting Porter, is there a chance that you just get up off the couch and start singing Super Freak?
I mean, maybe. I mean, why not? Right? I mean, let's be honest. So my father and I watch the draft together every year. We've done it for many years. And so if the Bills, here's the problem. He doesn't usually come to day the late. He usually leaves like halfway through day 2. So they picked him in round 3. He wouldn't be around. But I'm not above getting up and saying, super freak. He's super freaky. Like I'm not opposed to it. Like, let's do it. Like, I'm all the way in. So he's my, eyebrow raising. Okay. I see it. I see what you did there. And I'm trying to the best of my ability, overcompensate for me being too low on Reek Woolen.
Now you sing Super Freak.
Let me clear the vocal cords here. No, it's going to be funny when we do our karaoke battle, where I'm going to have to pick the right song at the right time. This is a chess match, sir. I can't wait.
Okay, so that's my player that I would be like, oh, okay. And I like Azrae Thomas. We've talked about this before. I like Benjamin Morrison a lot. I do think you're not going to see the best Benjamin Morrison year 1, obviously. To me, the player that I'm like, Elijah Hussey, North Carolina. And here's the reason why, okay? I mentioned that if I'm okay with you having a flaw, right? Having like one massive glaring flaw makes me go, I have a take. I think Elijah Hussey's a safety.
Okay, I'm willing to hear that.
Okay, and I want you to know that is I think that's a Bruceism. Like, I don't know if there's a lot of people out there who think he's a safety. I think he's a safety. Okay, so I think you think about the things that are difficult for safeties to do: run the alley, make a tackle. I think he can do that. Dude, sub 30-inch arms.
Yeah,
like I cannot. I cannot ask you to challenge anything at the catch point moving backwards, right? You need the extra momentum moving forward to account for the fact that you don't have the length, right?
Yep.
And also, I can't put you on the outside with sub 30-inch arms. I just can't. It's not the height. 5'10" is not good, but it's not the height. It's the sub 30-inch arms. Like, I can't.
That's the problem, right?
That's the problem.
That's why you're being
glaring.
You're being pegged as a nickel corner because they're like, well, we can't put you back there. Because if it's a jump ball that they're throwing deep, you won't get it. You can't possibly interfere with that.
No, but he's real smooth. Like, he's really oily. And now part of the reason that is because he's only 5'10", right? So his hips are really low, and so he transitions really smoothly. He should. Like, if you're 5'10" or 5'9" and you transition badly, that's a massive red flag because you have the benefit of lower hip elevation to help you through it, right? So for me, I think to myself, okay, this is a guy who he reads coverage really well. He diagnoses the run from distance well. I think he's a player that if you get him farther away from the action, you let the instincts take over. I actually think he can be a good player. I think he's a teams guy right away. So for me, he's like a safety 3 or a safety 4. Like that's the way Elijah Hussey, projects. I think he's a day 3 guy. If there are people who are higher on him than I am, I just if he's your first DB drafted, I'm gonna have a few things to say. Like if he's the first guy off the board who's a DB and it's like round 4, I'm gonna I have things to say about that.
So my thing about Elijah Hussey as a player is just the idea that you only give 22 receptions. So your coverage ability is there. You understand the assignment. But now the question is, does his assignment in college match what you want to do as a team? Is there a scalable fit? But it's not like he doesn't have experience. 3,600 NCAA snaps.
Oh, yeah.
He's been there for a while. Like he's seasoned. So what you're getting is a guy who you go, hey, he covers at a high level, and he's got the ability, also kick and punt return ability. Okay. You can find your way to an NFL roster with that. And then they can decide whether or not they think you're anything more than that. I still see him as a draftable player. It's just hard. Like I guess a question I have for you before we move on to safeties real quick to wrap up the show. Do you see a fit for anyone coming in and replacing Teron Johnson, or not replacing, but being that like backstop? And then in the next year, there'll be the option, because Cam Lewis has done the job, but they also see him as a safety. They also see him here. That tells me that if you can do multiple jobs, you probably aren't as good as that guy, which means I need to find the next Teron Johnson before I have to find the next Teron Johnson.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think Benjamin Morrison could do it if you asked him to do it.
Okay.
I don't think you draft him with the idea that he will.
Okay.
I don't think that's a player that you're like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna take you in the second round and then I'm gonna make you a slot defender. Like, I don't think that's the thing.
Okay.
I will say Justin Wally, Minnesota.
Okay.
Might be a player that you could probably get early day 3 that I think has some nickel ability. I think that I don't think I've been super focused on it, this particular draft class, because of the need for CB2 and the fact that, Taron Johnson's there. But Taron Johnson's also 30.
Yep.
And also, we talked about this like 2 years ago. Is Taron Johnson someone you want to eventually, transition to safety at some point? Like there's a history there.
I never want to lose him. I just don't think that, like, his body type, the way he plays the game so physically, it's not kind to you. And
no.
So in that way, he will eventually erode. And I think we started to see a little bit of it last year. So now the question is, how quickly can you as a franchise get out in front of that? Is there a slot corner out there who might be able to come in as a developmental guy? We're not going to move you today. Teron, you're fine. You're making plenty of money. We have to have you in this role. But at some point, we got to have a conversation about you moving. You're not leaving the team. You're just moving. Like, is that a thing we can do?
Yeah, I think it is eventually. I think you need to start preparing for the idea. I think anytime you have a player who's 30, I think you should be preparing for the eventuality that moment's coming.
Yeah.
Right? I do think that Jacob Parrish is probably a player that you could probably look at. I think he's going to go higher than you're probably willing to spend.
That's
the issue. The issue is how much are you willing to spend on a player that is a contingency plan, right? So I know, again, people are going to say Huzzy, and I mentioned before, I don't think that's it. And someone's going to say Upton Stout from Western Kentucky. Someone will say that. I just can't do it, man. The guy's 5'8". Like, I'm sorry.
No, 5'8". You can't be. Nope.
I'm sorry. Like, I just can't. And also, the way you have to be able to cover the run like a linebacker.
Can I say this, Bruce? I watched in this year's playoff game Teron Johnson lower his head and take on Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Mano a mano.
Yeah.
And that was a heroic, and yet he still got bulldozed. He slowed him down. He slowed him up, and it was a tackle. And I think he held him for about 4 yards on the run, which is that's a good margin.
Sure. Absolutely.
If you're trying to stop Derrick Henry. But I can't ask a guy smaller than Teron Johnson to come in and do the same thing.
No.
Like, that's lunacy.
No, you can't. And
physics becomes a thing at some point here.
Yeah, it really does. And it's a tricky thing to do, because the Bills they put so much on Taron Johnson's plate.
Yeah.
Like, they put so much on his plate. He is so important to this team. And it's one of those things where I don't even know if you try and go out and get another Taron Johnson. I think you're more likely to have success changing your scheme than you are to come up with another Taron Johnson.
And truthfully, that's where we were just talking to Anthony earlier about, just the idea that you might have to change your archetype of pass rusher because you don't have the time you used to have. Why did you used to have it? Well, you had a slot corner who was the best in the NFL. And guess what? He's an all-pro player who never got the accolades, and now he's going to retire in the next 4 years. And you might have to position switch him, like you've said before. Move him to safety. You might have to do a lot of things with him. You might have to change what you are entirely because you had a special talent at nickel corner. And everyone goes, let's find the next Tehran. There might not be.
There might be a next Tehran.
There might not be a next Tehran Johnson. Now, I don't want to neglect the safety position, but I feel like the Bills, having sunk a second-round pick last year, they kind of made their bones, and they've already proven this. They put a high draft pick into a position, and then they backfill with free agency, and they just cycle around that contract. So I guess the question for you is there a guy, is there a safety? First of all, is there a safety that you would see in the first round who you wouldn't, like for the Bills? If the Bills were to draft a safety in round 1, who you wouldn't just shut your TV off and then go screaming into the ether in your backyard?
Yes, Malachi Starks. I don't think he'll be there at 30, but he's the single guy that you could take from me at 30 that I would be like, yeah. Like I get it. He's too good to pass up. Like I get it.
What is it about him?
Everything. It's literally everything. So for me, Malachi Starks is one of those players that I mentioned box safeties and coverage safeties.
Yeah.
Right? And I mentioned how incredibly valuable it is if you do both.
Yep.
A huge part of safety development and safety evaluation is picking the thing that they do and then trying to find out whether or not they can be taught or developed to do the other one, right? So few safeties do you go checkbox, 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 and you go, well, that was easy. Malachi Starks is one of those people. And so for every flaw he has, which because everyone has a flaw, they're not perfect prospects, but every flaw he has, he some sort of has an exemplary trait that helps to mask the flaw that he has, right? So you think for yourself, okay, so at the route break, like when he's covering in from nickel or you ask him to man up, and okay, there's a route break. Somebody gets away from him for a quick second. Oh no, he's in a problem. But his acceleration is so good that he closes the window. So it's like, yeah, you shook loose of Malachi Starks, and then he shut the ball down again on him. So it's like, okay, so he has a flaw, but like, is he actually just baiting the quarterback? Like, you're like, is that actually a good thing? Like that's what I mean when I talk about complementary skills. You have a flaw that is then masked by a trait that you have that's so good that the flaw doesn't end up hurting you as much as it probably should. I didn't intend for that to rhyme. But for me, Malachi Starks is just such an easy conversation to have. And I know that everybody wants to talk about Nick Amenwari because he is a freak athlete and he blew up the combine and everything. I am not as high on Amenwari as everybody else is, and it's because he reminds me a lot of Tremaine Edmonds as our safety.
Yes.
So Tremaine Edmonds, I was not as high on as everybody else either. Now I still had a good grade on him. I didn't have a first round grade on him, but I had a day 2 grade on him, a high day 2 grade on him because I was like, hey, this guy's a freaky athlete, and when he pulls the trigger, man, it's beautiful. But I just said when he pulls the trigger, and there have been examples of people who just can't learn to fire the gun. And Tremaine Edmonds was always a little bit less than we thought he could be because of that.
So when
Amenwari is a player like that for me.
In that draft, they took Roquan Smith, top 10. Yeah. The Bears took him. And I saw that because I was still sober enough to process things as I was still just pouring away just rum at a Jamaican resort going, Josh Allen's my quarterback. My life is over. The Bills are doomed. Everything's awful. I blacked out before they drafted Tremaine Edmonds.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is in the morning when I woke up and saw it, and I was like, wait, we have Tremaine Edmonds. Okay, great. But I know for a fact that he's behind Roquan Smith in processing. Like, that's why he would fall, is because Roquan was taken where he was because he was such a cerebral linebacker. Edmonds is this freak athlete, size, length, whatever you have, but you can't make him understand the things that are happening in front of him. You have to teach him. And you have to mold that block of clay to be what it is for your specific team. And that's why his career has gone the way that it has. And so who are the safeties that can avoid falling into that? And who do you think fits that for the Buffalo Bills?
Ironically enough, I do think that the comparison you just made for me is a good one. And I think that if we're comparing the linebackers in that class to the safeties in this class, then Malachi Starks is Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds is Nick Emenwari.
Okay.
So
and that's it.
That's good. So for me, the safeties I really like, I love Xavier Watts. I think he's the best coverage safety, pure coverage safety in the draft, right up there with Malachi Starks. And I mentioned to you earlier that I had a conversation about, hey, the tackling thing, like as long as you're trying really hard, that's who I was talking about. I was literally just giving you a scouting report. You didn't know it, but I was giving you a scouting report for Xavier Watts, right? It's just, I don't even care if you're really that good at it, because I think I can teach you run fits better, but I can't teach you to try. I can't teach you to care. And
Yep.
Xavier Watts, he cares. Like, you look at the problem, right? His issue is he's hyper aggressive. He overruns his gap, right? And you think to yourself, okay, he opens up ginormous holes in the run game because he's just like, yo, where are you going, dude? Where are you going? Because the guy who's just like, where are you? It's like when you're sitting in the kitchen at a restaurant and you have a waiter come back and they grab the food and they start walking off with it before like you have all this. You're like, whoa, where are you going? Where are you going with that? We're not done here. Like, I still got another. You're missing their ravioli. You're missing their ravioli guy, right? And so I can teach the guy to calm down and wait for the ravioli. Like, I can do that. I just can't teach him to hustle. And so for me, that's the kind of player that I really, really like in the second round. I don't know if he's going to get there because I think he's probably a top of the second dude. So I don't know if he's going to be there when the Bills pick in the second, but I'm all the way in.
God. Bruce, here's a question. Do you believe, since you are our last pre-draft interview, between defensive line, defensive back, all of the opportunities that they're going to have at their disposal, it's all seemingly skewing the way of the defense, which I think is necessary, but is it a knee-jerk two questions. Is it a knee-jerk reaction to him being the MVP? Josh Allen, just like, hey, he'll do that again, and then we can just build up the defense and everything will be fine. And then when the Bills take a Luther Burden, everyone's heads will explode. And also, do you believe that there's value still in prioritizing the secondary over what is a very volatile defensive tackle room?
To me, it depends on the player. So if you're sitting there and Trey Amos is there and Harmon is there from Oregon, I'm taking Harmon.
100%.
I'm 100% taking Harmon, right? Like, and if I'm sitting there at the bottom of the third, right, then the question to me is, who have you already picked? Because I mentioned to you that if you take a player like Elijah Hussey in the seventh, right, as your third defensive back that you've taken, I like that pick. If you take him in the fourth as the first defensive back that you've taken, I hate that pick.
Yep.
So to me, it's about sequencing too. But as far as the actual, because you're talking about pick 30 right here, because everything after pick 30 becomes
sequencing. Sequence this?
So for me, everything after pick 30 becomes a sequencing conversation, right? Yep. But so for pick 30, it's not really position. To me, it's a player.
Okay.
Because to me, I can make an argument for a specific safety at 30. I can make an argument for a couple of different defensive tackles at 30. I can make an argument for at least two cornerbacks who I think are going to be there at 30 in Thomas and Amos, who I think you could probably pick, right? I've seen some Maxwell Hairston things, not quite as high on him. But I don't think Benjamin Morrison is a 30 pick. I don't think that's where he goes. So for me, I think that it's about which one of these players isn't supposed to be there. That's the conversation that I would do between tiebreaker.
And so then when you're talking about how you build out this roster through the draft, like if you're the Bills looking at the draft going, I want to make sure that when I come out of this, I've strengthened my secondary. And I don't want to do the thing that fans have been screaming about for years, which is they always wait till day 3 to address the secondary. I still feel like this team could continue living in that world. They might just have to sink one pick into day 1 or 2, right? Like, I think, how much are we as fans overblowing the need in the secondary?
Say that one more time.
How much are we as fans overblowing the need in the secondary?
Oh, okay.
Considering all of the bloviation about how great this class is, hey, we've got prospect here, prospect there, and it's all going to be in the middle rounds. And then the Bills will wait until day 3. And they've done this, and they've built a roster out of guys who are taking day 3 in the secondary.
I don't think we're overreacting to the need in the secondary. And the reason I don't think we're overreacting is because what we've seen from this staff is the ability to create a floor out of secondary. What we haven't seen is a high ceiling from the cornerback position. Now, we've seen it from our safeties, for sure. But who's the best CB2 we've had here? I think it's Rasul Douglas. I think it's the best CB2 we've had since
Chris,
Sean McDermott came around.
You haven't said a word all night. Chris, if I had to ask you.
Yeah, I did. I asked Bruce to sing Super Freak. I've been here the whole time.
If you had to ask.
Yes, the important questions.
The lay fan, again, somebody who doesn't watch it, doesn't watch film, who do you think has been the Bills' best CB2?
I mean, clearly Rasul Douglas.
Because he's
not
willing
Kaiir Elam.
You know what separates him?
Kaiir Elam has the best notebook.
Here's the worst part. Levi Wallace wasn't terrible in coverage. Dane Jackson wasn't terrible in coverage. They just didn't have a willingness to give up the body and die on that hill of run defense. Rasul Douglas did. And that immediately ingratiated him to the team. Do you think that they've shifted their paradigm in terms of what they want? And if that's the case, then I don't know. Like, I just think we're in a whole, like, this thing's wide open for them. Don't you think?
To me, I think that if they're going to shift anything, what I would think is they're going to shift towards someone who can help them combat the quick game.
Yes.
And so the reason why I said that I think that Azari Thomas is actually an underrated, I know we're all talking about Trey Amos, and that's great. I think that Azari Thomas is probably a better fit right away. And the answer is because I think he helps you win in the quick game. And I think one of the conversations that Sean McDermott had, it keeps sticking with me, is the idea that he said, hey, you can keep playing what you're playing and you can get, paper cutted to death, or you can come up and challenge him and try and make some plays. And so for me, I think he's thinking about a cornerback like, who can help me not get paper cutted to death? And I think that Azari Thomas is that guy. So for me, if I'm looking at a player that I think is more likely to be a Bill, it's him.
I can't wait to see it. Bruce, what do you have planned between now and draft night?
So this upcoming week, which we're recording this on, am I allowed to say when we're recording this?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, it's not coming out for another week.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I want to just, tip anything off. We're recording this on the 13th at 8:17 p.m. Eastern time. And this upcoming Thursday, I'm going to do late round prospects, and I'm going to talk about the value of mocks, because I had some robust conversation with somebody on social media about how he has like a distinct anger toward watching someone post a mock draft, and he's like a crusade against this. And so the level of aggression was strong. And so I'm going to use that aggression and channel it into something positive. And also, he's not there to defend himself in the pod, so that makes it really easy. So for me, I am going to talk through the value that I see in mock draft scenario planning. And I'm going to talk about late round targets. And then the day of the draft, my pod drops. I have thought long and hard about how to, first off, that's what she said. But also, I have tried to figure out how to make my pod that I drop the day of the draft not immediately expire, right? And historically, I've done a full first round mock of all 32 teams that year. And it was my attempt at being predictive because I wanted to kind of talk through. But the problem is, if you go listen to that pod the day after, it's useless now.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a concept called recompulus, which is ridiculous, redonkulous, and comp all in one word. It's recompulus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on a friend or, an acquaintance in the space, and we are going to make draft comps to not players. We're not going to use players. We're going to compare people to inanimate objects, washing machines, right? The car. We're going to just do draft comps, but the more ridiculous comps, the better. And the rule is you're not allowed to compare them to any other player who's ever played the game. You have to compare them to like Alex Trebek, or you have to compare them to, Ted Mosby or whatever it is, or, the washing machine that you leave out front, not because it's broken, but because you got a better one. It's something like that. You have to compare them to something ridiculous.
Like Drew's singing voice.
Drew's singing voice. Absolutely.
Listen, I swear to God, I will. We're not going to waste it here. Bruce, this sounds amazing. I can't wait to check that all out, because here's what I love. I love that you take an unorthodox path to all of this coverage, all of the ways that you like to describe things. You have a very cerebral approach to football, and this underscores it. It's been cool to get to pick your brain and then also just talk to you or see the things you tweet, listen to your show. It's nice. You bring a different view to scouting the draft. In an area where I feel like it's incredibly dry. It used to be like oatmeal with you know how you make oatmeal and there's not enough water in it?
Yes.
And it just gets
Yes,
mucky.
I know that. I know that oatmeal.
That's been the draft for me for years. You bring a little bit of life to that, and I love that. That's why I like talking to you about this stuff. Now, obviously, we can't do this all night. We got to get the hell out of here. Everybody, you know where to find Bruce Nolan. But for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Bruce Nolan. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rockpile Report. I will see you on the other side of the NFL draft.
All right, 5, 4, 3, 2,